What's going on, everyone? Before we get into today's show, if you haven't subscribed already, I don't know what you're waiting for. One of the fastest growing Broncos YouTube channels out there. We'll have the best free draft coverage in a week from today, so make sure you hit that big red button because we're knocking on the door of 7,500 subscribers. Come join the channel. If you're a real one, hit that big red button. Welcome into the Broncos Breakdown. We got the latest rumors coming at you today. We're going to talk about a potential Deebo Samuel trade, which, as far-fetched as it seems, it's still fun to talk about. That's what you do in the offseason. Then we're going to look at some other nice news and rumors bits like DeSean Jackson potentially to the Broncos and what's Peyton got up his sleeve for the NFL Draft. Stay tuned for that at the end of the show. But first up, a trade for Deebo Samuel. So, the 49ers and Deebo Samuel's agent have had a rough go at finding a middle ground at reaching a contract extension. So Deebo Samuel yesterday announced that he has requested a trade. Jeff Darlington, one of the first to report it, I think the first to report it, and pretty much 31 other teams picked up their phone and called the 49ers. 31 other teams don't have what it takes to get Deebo Samuel, but you still call. And maybe if you say something really nice, I don't know, maybe if you just don't FaceTime and piss off John Lynch like that, you could get Deebo that way. Very unlikely. Deebo Samuel's going to get a lot if he is end up traded. I think the 49ers on his side, by the way, like my own side, I think they'll find an agreement to keep him in San Francisco. But if you want to see Deebo come to the Broncos because we're living in fantasy land, we're playing Madden in real life, just type me. It'd be fun, right? How could it not be? I mean, this is offense, and we'll look at what it could look like with Deebo. But it would be pretty awesome to just toss Deebo Samuel into the mix of what's already an absolute nuclear arms loaded offense at Mile High. The only way Deebo Samuel ends up in Denver is if 420 was every single day. If you were smoking it up and you were living that fantasy life, thinking the Broncos can somehow persuade the 49ers to trade Deebo to Denver without getting a first-round pick back. I mean, the Seahawks have Denver's 2 future firsts, so you'd have to wait a handful of years. There's just no way if the 49ers were to trade Deebo Samuel, they would trade him to a team like the Broncos that can't offer a first-round pick this year or a first next year. But gun to my head, here's what I think maybe a trade looks like. The Broncos get Deebo Samuel. The 49ers get a second-round pick this year. That's the Broncos' highest pick in the draft. So it's literally so far from other teams what they can offer. A future third, because they can't give next year's second. That belongs to Seattle. So we have to settle for a third-round pick. And then KJ Hamler and Tim Patrick to help Trey Lance along in his first real NFL season, most likely as a starter this year. They get a former second-round pick in Hamler coming off an ACL injury, and Tim Patrick, who's just like a quarterback's best friend. He's like a golden retriever. You throw to him over the middle, he'll get you the first down. He'll run the routes other players don't want to run because he knows it results in a free safety flying across the middle and knocking his head off. But it's not a good offer. Right? It doesn't even get close to what San Francisco's looking for. But this is Deebo Samuel we're talking about. How can I not talk about a player who had 1,400 receiving yards last season, 6 touchdowns to go along with it, and on the ground, 365 yards and 8 touchdowns. 14 touchdowns combined through the air and on the ground. Yeah, when someone like that is on the trade market, you at least entertain the idea of finding a way to get Deebo Samuel. It's like semi-pro. We traded a washing machine for Lennox. Like, that's how wild it's going to get if we're going to try to maneuver ourselves into a position where we actually think Deebo Samuel could end up going to the Broncos after everything they gave up to get Russell Wilson. They've got nothing left to give pretty much, at least nothing that the 49ers would be interested in, unlike a team like the Jets who could give them a 10th overall pick this year. The Broncos can't touch that. So what would you give up / trade for Deebo Samuel? Like, I gave you a trade option. Maybe you want to call the 49ers GM yourself. Talk to John Lynch and say, listen, John, I am prepared, and this is where I need your help. Like, I am prepared to give up beer, wings, and my spot on the couch for 18 months. You can have every beer and wing I was going to have. It goes right to you. for Deebo. That's like the best idea I can come up with. How about like a mulligan every single time you, like every round of golf? Just like, it's almost like God's above you and like no one saw that bad hit. Would you do that? Would you give up that for Deebo? I'm grasping at straws here. I mean, we're talking about one of the most dynamic players in football. And the Broncos, as fun as it would be, look at this offense. Like, how fun would this be? Russell Wilson hands it off to Javonte Williams. No, it's a fake. Deebo Samuel's in the backfield. He goes into the flat. Jerry Jeudy's running down deep. No, he just checks it down to Courtland Sutton for a 30-yard first down pass. Like, that's how fun it could be with Deebo in the mix. And if the screen was big enough, we'd have KJ Hamler and Tim Patrick and Al O on there. We're running out of names. That's how loaded it would be if Deebo Samuel. In fact, I don't even know who wide receiver 1 would be. I think it'd be Deebo, but maybe it's Jeudy or maybe it's Sutton. No one would be wrong with any of those 3 answers as wide receiver 1. Next up on the show, DeSean Jackson. Is he going to end up in Mile High? Longtime Philadelphia Eagle. Kind of a taxi squad-esque, not really, but close to it player the last couple of seasons, bouncing around. We're going to look at, the possibility of DeSean Jackson going to the Broncos. But first, I want to tell you about Chat Sports and the awesome NFL draft coverage we have coming your way a week from today. Can you believe it? Like, this is honestly one of my favorite weeks of the entire sports calendar because the idea of a player sitting in his living room and thinking, if I'm picked right now, I'm moving to New York City. And, oh, no, they didn't pick me. Now you're going to Houston. Like, the drastic change after one pick. That's just, like, why I love the draft so much because, like, you get to go house shopping all over the country and you're ahead every 30 seconds. But anyway, subscribe, youtube.com/chatsportstv. We'll be live every single pick, all 3 rounds, all 7 rounds, all 3 days. Going on to DeSean Jackson, though. So DeSean Jackson listed the Broncos, Chiefs, Browns, and Packers as the only teams he has interest in playing for in 2022. DeSean, let me tell you something, buddy. Some free advice right now. I'd open that list up to all 32 teams because when you're entering the 15th season of your NFL career, can you really be that picky when it's been a long time? Like, okay, hear about this. Ready? Producer Marshall, Giants fan. Do you remember the 4 touchdowns, Eagles, Giants in the fourth quarter with under 8 minutes left? DeSean, he's got his eyes closed already. DeSean Jackson on that punt when he muffed it. That was a long time ago. That was 12 years ago? Mars, what do you think that was? 2010, 11? Yeah, middle fingers up. So that was a long time ago we saw DeSean Jackson. We haven't seen that guy in quite some time. So do you want the Broncos to go out and sign DeSean Jackson? Y for yes, N for no. In fact, as I'm filming, our Raiders Report host, Mitchell Wrench, just walked in, where DeSean Jackson played last year. And we'll look at some of his stats here. Mitch, do you like DeSean? Is he still good? Hey, we got a shake of the head. DeSean, yeah, I'll pass on Jackson too. So our Raiders, Giants, and now our Broncos host here, I'll go. Nah. In fact, I think it's so sad that DeSean Jackson asked to be released from the Rams last year, who would go on to win the Super Bowl, to play for the most chaotic franchise in the history of sports, the Las Vegas Raiders. If you look at what DeSean's done the last 4 seasons, his last year in Tampa Bay, which, by the way, like, that's going to be a great trivia question one day. Who remembers him as a Buck? Like, it's very weird to think about. But last year, combining Raiders and Rams stats, just under 500 yards, 450 and change, 2 touchdowns. Like, he said, 5 touchdowns his last 3 years combined? Let's talk about the draft. I'm sorry, DeSean, if you want to play for Denver, there's a crowded wide receiver room that just doesn't have room, in my opinion, for a very old guy that relies on speed, that doesn't have that top speed like he used to have in 2010. So, talking about the draft, I think it's important to remind ourselves of what Denver has going into the 2022 NFL Draft. They don't pick until the final selection of round 2. We know this, thanks to the LA Rams, that Von Miller trade. They do have 3 picks in the top 100. They used to have 5. Now they're down to 3. So Peyton still has a decent amount of ammunition. Like, there are teams who are way worse off that you probably don't think of. For example, I don't know if this is worse off, but the Panthers have to wait from the 6th overall pick to round 4. They don't do anything. Round 2 and 3. That's a long time to wait. So if you've got faith in George Payton's drafting abilities after what he did last year, give this video a thumbs up icon. Let's show George some love here by hitting that thumbs up, showing him that we believe that even without a first-round pick, he can still make some noise, and he can still, pull some rabbits out of a hat and make some magic happen. Because last year, what he did on day 2, and that's what he's going to do this year, he ended up with a pretty good haul. Javonte Williams, who I think is going to be a breakout running back this year. Quinn Miners, who's going to be competing for a starting spot. And if it wasn't for Reisner and Glasgow, a second-round pick and a free agent signing, he'd be starting last year. Or he's going to push out Cushenberry at center. And then you got Baron Browning, who was a little slow coming on to start last season, but he picked things up as the season went along. He might be moving to outside linebacker. Listen, Denver's got a good track record, by the way, just beyond Peyton, but before that with Elway, of drafting day 2. Like, here are some notable picks that maybe you forgot. We're like, wow, I didn't realize that we got him in the second or we got him in the third. Hamler, I'm still waiting to see. The jury's still out. Sad because of injury last year. But Cushenberry, Cush was a third-rounder. That's pretty good value. You find a third-rounder who starts every single day for you, essentially. Reisner was a second. Sutton was a second. And you got to go back a little bit. But don't forget, out of BC, Justin Simmons was a third-round pick. So Denver, something's in the water because when day 2 comes around, you could argue they're better at drafting in the second and the third rounds than in the first round lately. Because the NFL draft is a crapshoot. There's a lot of things. I mean, one, these teams, as crazy as it sounds, are investing millions of dollars into 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds, young individuals. Careers are literally, as dramatic as it sounds, at stake. Because if GMs miss on these picks, they could be fired. The easiest way to lose your job as a GM is to have the team play poorly because you put a bad team together because you drafted poorly. It all starts at the draft. It's the cheapest way to build a good roster. Okay? You can go sign good players in free agency, but good luck getting 53 good players who will take pay cuts. Or you can draft players, get them cheap, rookie contracts, 4 years, 5 years for some. The draft is a crapshoot, but if I've learned, even at the small sample size of what George Payton did last year, I'm not worried about what his abilities are to be picking for the first time, potentially at the end of the second round, maybe moving up in round 2, like he did last year to get Miners. Just saying, don't rule it out. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Happy to have you along with me on a pretty nice Thursday as we get ready to roll into the weekend. Make sure you're subscribed because we'll be hitting you up with more Broncos draft coverage, including my final mock draft. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled, have those notifications on, get tuned for that, get ready for that. We'll catch you later with more Broncos news and rumors.